Good morning all. Good morning and welcome to Construction Philosophy's webinar. Today's focus is on the revival of country's economy and the role of construction sector to play in this scenario. Today we have with us as the moderator, Mr. Gauridasan Nair, who is the Chief of Editorial Construction Philosophy. And our panelists are Mr. Arun Sahai, who is the National President and official spokesperson of Builders Association of India, BAI. He is currently associated as Chief Operating Officer, COO, with Ahluwalia Contractors India Limited. He is a member CEDC in Bureau of Indian Standards and member Smart Cities Committee, CD 59. He has also been Vice President for 2 terms in Indian Building Congress, IBC, from 2016 to 2018, and continues to be a governing council member of the body. He also represents the construction industry in many other forms. And we have Mr. Jayant Vaidya, Director, Colliers International Design Services. Mr. Jayant Vaidya has been one of the founding members in Synergy Property Development Services. And we have Mr. Shiva Senathipati, who is the Director of GLEETS, an experienced construction project management and cost management professional with more than 18 years of industry experience, both in India and overseas. He holds a leadership position in GLEETS India and was instrumental in the growth of GLEETS in India since its establishment in 2008. And we have Mr. Dinesh Dubey, who is the Director of Operations, Turner India, a project management professional with over 28 years of experience in the building and construction industry. So Dinesh is currently the Director for Operations, Turner Project Management India Limited, and heads operations for the building and factory verticals across India. He is also Turner Innovation Champion and is responsible for driving innovation and new technology initiatives for India. And today's host is Mr. Nebu Abraham, editor and publisher of Construction Philosophy. Thank you and welcome. I would request Mr. Gauridasan Nair to take up. Thank you.
Thank you, Nebu. So, good morning, panelists, Shri Arun Sahai, Shri Dinesh Dubey, Shri Jayant Vaidya, Shri Shiv Senathipati, and all of you who are, listening in on this interesting webinar on the role that the construction sector can play in reviving the national economy. This is the second in a series of webinars being organized by the magazine, and we think this is an important forum for us to look at the upside and downside of what we have been through over the past 2 months. We are into 4.0 of the lockdown, the 4th phase, and we need to look at where we are headed rather than, pining over the lost opportunities. So Construction Philosophy, as many of you might know, is a 1-year-old publication. We have been trying to be as serious as possible and as insightful as possible into the diverse dimensions of the construction industry, both in the private and the public sector. We have been looking at the built-up spaces, the design aspects, the project management aspects, and also the materials world very closely over the past 1 year, which you would see if you go through the copies of the magazine at the site of the Construction Philosophy. Now, coming to this particular webinar that we have planned. See, when we discuss this whole situation that we have been caught in as a result of the COVID pandemic, the first webinar was mostly focused on the problems, the bottlenecks, the kind of challenges, the kind of lost opportunities, the difficulties. Maybe it's time that we took a positive look at the situation and try to see where we can go from here. Because we are in a new normal, which everybody knows. This webinar itself is a proof for that. Because we are going to perhaps need more of technology to drive our growth, the growth of the industry, the sector, and we may have to turn to technology more and more to ensure that this sector remains immune to pandemics or unforeseen developments like these. Now, but before going to the upsides, let's take a look at what happened to the sector, or what the sector got in the 4 packages announced by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman over the past 1 week. If you are to ask me, this is a personal take. If you are to ask me, my personal feeling is that the construction industry or the construction sector has not received any direct address from the Honorable Finance Minister, which means that no specific allocations have been made for the sector. But at the same time, over the past 1 week, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman has ensured that more money is put into the hands of the people, so that there is actually a revival of demand in the economy, and this should translate into more demand and more liveliness in the construction sector as well. The way in which loan repayments have been stretched out, the way in which NBFCs have been refinanced or sought to be refinanced. There are so many ways in which indirectly the construction sector might also benefit. But there have been very specific demands from the sector, like the question of GST waiver or holiday or reduction or things like that. There has been the talk about the option of force majeure, of which I think the finance minister mentioned in one of her press conferences. I think there are so many issues that need to be addressed. So I think, as the spokesperson for the Builders Association of India and the national vice president of the association, I would request Sri Arun Sahai to update us on what the industry and the sector had sought and what the sector has got. Sri Arun Sahai.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Really, my compliments to Construction Philosophy magazine for initiating such a webinar whereby we are able to discuss the issues concerning our industry. Like Builders Association had represented to the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, Ministry of Urban Development, and Ministry of Labour as well. And we made a lot of representations since the lockdown started. But unfortunately, as you yourself just mentioned, there has not been much done for the industry. No specific allocation for the construction industry by the FM in her 5 tranches amounting to more than 20 lakhs has been directed or maybe has been given to the industry. We, as an industry, everybody knows that construction industry contributes 8% of the GDP, and more than 50% of the total plan outlay or budgetary provision is for the construction industry. And everybody knows that we are the second largest employer after the agriculture, employing more than 50 million workers. So having said that, we have then construction industry linkages with more than 250 industries. And upward movement of the industry would naturally affect the fortune of the other industries too. So we were expecting that in case a special consideration for the industry is looked into, things would have been much better, because our supply chain too would get motivated and would have also, we would have seen the demand. Now there are a lot of things which I feel would be a deterrent or maybe for the industry to revive immediately if we have a short and a longer vision. Immediately for next 3 months, I don't see construction industry to bounce back and contribute to the economy. Maybe after 3 months or 4 months, like we looking for now Q3. Q2, initially, we thought maybe June, after June, July onwards, we'll see something positive. But now we feel even the Q2 wouldn't be very productive for the industry. considering that the workers who were there on the work sites in the labor camps, the government has facilitated them to move out and everybody has gone back to their native places. And in next 1 week, we will see more exodus from the campsites and the labor sites. So by 31st of May, we would know that there is hardly 10% of the construction workers which are available on project sites. Now, in such a situation, and that 10% also doesn't cover all skills. In any construction activity to be revived or to again remobilize, we require workers from all trades. We require unskilled workers and semi-skilled and skilled from different trades who would contribute to any activity to be taken up on sites. So that is one big hassle. Even with 10%, 20% workers, nothing much is going to, we won't be able to proceed for our construction activities. Now, just to highlight what Builders Association had requested or had represented, because we felt that we require something for the industry which would go a long way in its growth. We had asked for the release of funds. Up to March, the 20th or 22nd March, till the time we had worked on project sites, there was a huge amount which was due to the contractor from their respective clients. It could be government, semi-government, state governments, central government, and PSU, and even private developers. So normally, as a practice, by 31st March, the contractor dues are looked into and they are cleared on priority, which was in this particular year, which has not so been done. Considering the financial year was to close on 31st March, the payments and the bills were all in the process, they all stopped. And it has become a second priority to clear the contractor bills. There have been notifications coming from different state governments, whereby they are saying that all the revenue should be only used for COVID-related activities, whether it is medical facilities or whether it is the paramedical staff and salaries and all. So construction is still on this second priority and at perhaps no priority, if I may say so. So unless there is a release of funds, restarting work would not make sense for the construction companies, because they don't have the liquidity. They can start and maybe survive for a week, 15 days, but they again would require funds from the due funds on those respective projects. So that is one. The second was, this 2.5 months has been a purely non-productive period, and this period would be still for another more than 2.5, 3 months. So maybe for the 6 months, we were wanting the government to waive off the interest on the bank loans, or also on the mobilization advance, which we take from the clients on the government and central government projects. On government projects, there is a mobilization advance which is on interest-bearing mobilization advance. So the fund has been lying with the bank. It has not been utilized. So unutilized funds, we had requested that interest waiver should have been there. It is not deferment, but waiver. So deferment is not a solution. So we have not utilized the funds for 3 months, 4 months, and it would be utilized for another 2 months. So 6 months interest waiver was what we were looking for, we had represented, which has not come through. Then we had been requesting for suspension of taxes. Suspension of taxes, we said GST on real estate should have been waived, since there is a stamp duty. Once the project gets completed, you don't charge, GST is not applicable, only the stamp duty on registration is applicable. So we said to promote construction, to promote real estate, which had been doing as such, which has been under a lot of stress. So to promote that sector, we said GST should have been waived. Only stamp duty, as in the past, should have been applicable. And then we had requested for taxes also. There should have been deferment of taxes, whether it was income tax, GST collection. Of course, so that immediate cash flow required for reviving the project, was the priority for the contractors, which again has not so been addressed. A performance guarantee, what has been given to us is two or three things. One is the performance guarantees to the extent of the work executed can be released. But again, it has lot of writers. So I really have my doubts whether they will actually get released, because they say the contractor should have defaulted at the time when lockdown started. So it would involve a lot of formalities, which my discussion with the clients has indicated would be a big issue. Reimbursement formula has had to be worked out. We had been requesting the government. You have, by MHA orders, and said that all construction workers have to be paid their wages during the lockdown period. But we have been requesting for, the contractor with his limited means is unable to pay those wages. But there are funds which are available with the government, BOCW funds, which is a building construction workers cess. We said through that cess, these wages could have been addressed, could have been paid or reimbursed to the contractors, but nothing has been so discussed or even mentioned. So we are not very happy as such. We were looking for a lot of support from the government, which has not been forthcoming. We still expect or hope maybe in future they are able to realize, because they have supported MSME sector. They have not addressed the issues of construction sector. So hope is the best which we can have.
Thank you. I think you've given a very comprehensive narration of the situation right now. But then when you look at it as somebody, from the outside, or even as part of the industry, the question comes: what could be the rationale for the government's decision not to address directly the concerns of the building industry, the construction industry? Mr. Dinesh Dubey, do you see some rationale in the government's decision not to address each of these demands which were put before them by the Builders Association of India? So could there be some rationale for that?
Yes, I think the big rationale is priorities. And priorities, when I say, because we knew even before COVID, we were in a tight spot in terms of physical prudence was concerned. And today it's a roti, kapda, and then makan, so probably we are all going with the priority of what is. So government is still grappling with the migrant issue. They are not able to address that thing. Now, naturally, if they address migrant issue, actually they are addressing the construction issue also by default. That's point one. Point two is they also fell in terms of kickstarting the economy and the way they're putting money in the people's hand. It is the MSME which is really, really going to drive the ecosystem. So because I think construction has a far more bigger challenges than the pure COVID related issues, and these challenges has been there, be it legal issues, be it statutory issues, be it funding issues. Honestly, the fundings were as it is skewed even before these things were concerned. This has just come together. So I'm sure, as Mr. Sahai mentioned, it will be there, but then that's not on the priority. It might happen in the second tranche, third tranche, or maybe something later on. So that's the reality of it. I don't think government see it. Surprisingly, internationally, if you see, is construction is still deemed as an essential activity. And most of our developments world over are still open. Constructions are going on. Of course, there's a different challenge because of the new COVID situation, because of SOP demands and all those things, social distancing. The productivities are extremely poor. So that's a separate thing altogether. But then that's the only take I have on this issue.
Yeah, I get your point. Yeah. Mr. Vaidya, your thoughts on this? Because, when we discussed this whole issue the last time, all these issues were flagged by Mr. Sahai himself. And I remember, the general tenor of our discussion was in the direction of, the government responding positively to these demands, which are probably fundamental to the survival of the industry. But then obviously the focus has been on, rehabilitating or facilitating the return of the migrants to their homes. And, most of them are on the road even now. They have still not reached their homes. And the key demands put before the government by the builders and the construction industry majors have not been addressed for some reason. Mr. Vaidya.
What you said is quite pertinent and right in all the respect. We always actually thought that there is something fundamentally went wrong. Is that letting first the migrant labor related to the construction go, right? Like, yes, it's very human to sort of panic and leave, and at that category, at that level, at that mindset, it's very essential for people to leave immediately, panic, and first thing is that to leave for their hometown. Most of them have a mindset that even if we die, we will want to die at home, right? Now that time, if you see that none of us did anything, neither government, neither the builder sector. I mean, yes, people did whatever they could, but no, it was not sufficient. The thing is that if somehow we would have been able to convince the migrant laborer to stay at the site, necessary facilities were given, which was given in a lot of sites, but in a general, probably the accommodations, the rents were paid, the food were supplied, and if they were confident enough that not to leave, then probably we wouldn't have the problem what we're having today in terms of construction, right? So now, as you see that we're looking at a different scenario where half the people reached and other half is on the way, and in this situation, probably none of them would be coming back, right? So, and the construction industry, even if you give all the money required, it wouldn't move without any laborers, right? That's one of the fundamental things. So I think that's the mistake or that situation which we have to see how we can sort of reverse it, right, in coming month, which will be a costly thing, but somehow the government need to do that. The developers, the contractors need to encourage. That is one of the things which I see that we need to do that. And the second is that what I see the real estate, the construction is in two types. One is the build to suit or the infrastructure project, and another is the speculative one, right? Which is probably the housing or whatever, even some extent the retail and the commercial, where if you look at the infrastructure or the build to suit project, you know that if you build, you get money and project is closed, right? While on the real estate side, on the speculative project, it's very difficult for a builder to be certain of the fate of the project. They are not sure whether if you move forward also, you might end up having the project which is unsold, right? Be it a retail mall, no one knows about it. So even in that situation, how would they take that risk, even if the money is there, right? So it's a kind of a two different scenario which we are tackling. Even now, that's the reason probably a lot of banks and the financial institutions have stopped funding, that because they probably think that they are putting money to a dead project, it's or they are probably adding to already the finance which is turned NPA, so this is actually the situation which is probably will continue to be there for a couple of months, until the confidence returns, right? In the market, till the migrant labor comes back, we don't see that situation. Government, even if they give money, it'll be very little use, right, in certain projects. That's one of the things which I see that.
Yeah, Mr. Shiva, I think this is going to be a project manager's nightmare. With all these dislocations and the disruptions and the impossibility of things returning to normal anytime soon, I think that's going to place huge challenges before project managers. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think there are two aspects here. The first one is to look at our ongoing projects, and how we can get them back to normal. So those projects itself, which are well under construction, will face a lot of issues, starting from program challenges, costing, because the contractors will have to be compensated, like Mr. Sahai said. Definitely they have incurred costs, and then the government and the end user also need to look at how to compensate them. And then add to that, we are talking about the social distancing industry, which is very, very challenging. So those are the things, so that we are also looking at as a company, and I'm sure the industry is looking at as a whole. Identify first of all what the challenges are and mitigate them on the ongoing projects. From a project management perspective, this could be, what is going to be the program for the project, revised program, taking into consideration availability of workforce, the so-called social distancing that we still need to sort of somehow implement at the project sites. And then, what is the cost going to be? Come to an agreement, that, because the contract is not very clear. In most of the situations, how do you deal with such situations? But definitely, like Mr. Sahai said, there has been a cost incurred, and contractors are looking for a certain level of compensation, which is fair. So those are the things that we need to look at and put them back on track even before everybody within the stakeholder team gets the confidence and move forward with full force. If there is a lack of confidence amongst the clients and the contractors and the rest of the stakeholders, then we can't solve the major problem of getting the workforce and getting the supply chain back on track. So all these stakeholders have to come together, and that is one of the things project managers have to focus on, to make sure these issues are resolved, and that would be the focus for the next few months, so that then we can address the larger issues, that is outside our purview. At the moment, the focus is on addressing issues between 2 or 3 parties, so that everybody can come to a mutual agreement, and then go to the supply chain, go to the workforce, how we can sort of get back the people back on track. So that is, there are various things. Health and safety is going to be looked at in a very different manner, on the new ongoing projects and even in new projects. So those are the things that we are looking at.
Yeah, Mr. Sahai, your first attempt to convince the government about your problems have obviously failed. Did you have a plan B then, or do you have one even at least now? Or how are you going to strategize your moves for the industry as a whole as we try to open once again, reopen once again, and resume work?
There are parallelly, we have a couple of other industry or associations. Builders Association, of course, has been the biggest and has been the oldest, representing the construction companies, and whether they are contractors or real estate developers, and even the big manufacturers of building materials. Now, our next strategy has been, like lately we've been associating and talking to National Highway Builders Federation, NHBF, which is an association of contractors doing highway jobs. Then CREDAI, real estate developers, we are in touch with them. Then CFI, Construction Federation of India, and CIDC. We had 2 days back. We had a very detailed, meeting with them, and we discussed, what are the issues and why they are not being looked into. Just to inform our panelists, Builders Association for last more than 15 years, I've been seeing myself that even for the budget, financial budget, we are being invited to give our inputs, to give our wish list, discuss with the finance minister and the finance secretary, with an entire team, 1-to-1. We are given an audience in the North Block for more than half a day, 4 hours to 6 hours, where we discuss our the industry issues in detail. But this time, when it was more so required, nobody has even paid attention to the representation which we have made. There has been no communication from the government side, which we feel is deterrent to the industry. So now our strategy plan B is, now collectively we all make a representation wherein the government also feels, yes, the problem is not related to only a building sector. It is there in the highway road sector. It is there not only for small contractors, it is there for small, medium and big contractors as well. So
what is the amount that we are talking about here? Like, normally we all know that towards the end of the financial year, there would be this huge arrears, piled up arrears, payment arrears with the government, state governments and the central government. If you're looking at the central government alone, what would be the kind of amount that is due to you? State governments, we may not have any consolidated figure.
No, but the state government projects are to be funded by the state governments. Central government can only fund their projects. Like I'm being an active in construction, Ahluwalia Contracts, I'm the CEO there. We are doing projects pan-India. There, the central government is trying to fund the projects which they want to complete. Like we are doing AIIMS, hospital projects at 4 or 5 locations, Nagpur, Calcutta, Delhi, and Jammu. There, those projects are on their priority. There, the fund flow for a month was not there, but after April, the fund flow has started coming. They are wanting us to work. So unless you give liquidity, the works will not progress. That's our contention. And state governments, by and large, if I may name a few states, are still funding their projects. Bihar, for one, they are wanting their ongoing projects to get completed because, again, hospitals are on their priority list. Similarly, West Bengal, we're doing projects for the state government. There, again, the health sector is on their priority. Other sectors may perhaps maybe in due time will come in their priority. But there are certain states which are really looking, construction would provide jobs. Let us understand what their short-term and long-term gains. Government is providing food, ration, the FM has been saying it on and off. We provided in the train, the food to them, ration to them. This is only short-term. What will happen to them after a month?
Precisely, that is the point. That is the point,
so
Mr.
After a month, unless the project revives, there won't be jobs. And you can't can't be feeding people sitting at home. At one stage, they have to come and work. When the offices started working with 33%, we were the first one to say, yes, let's identify how how we can continue with our projects with a minimum people. Similarly, the government should focus on long-term gains. Long-term gains is mobilizing resources for the construction industry. Contractors, if not paid, the building material sector will get affected. Further, equipment sector, machinery and equipment sector is 100% dependent on the performance of the construction companies. That sector will not, is totally will be doomed. So my concern has been government, instead of feeding people, for a short time, it was understandable. For a month, to food, shelter, everything should be given. Initially, in case when the lockdown was announced, lockdown 1, if they had given a week window for people to go back and settle down in their hometowns, it would have been a much better solution. Considering that April, May is as it is, seasonal harvesting and all is there. So workers, they go back home. Now workers are going back at a time when they are supposed to come back in the month of June, July. Now they will be again stranded there for the next 3 months. So the entire construction activity has come to a halt for almost 6 months, mid-March to September. So our concern has been you try to work out with the industry what is good for everybody. Unless there are jobs, unless the project starts, labor will not get remuneration.
Yeah, I appreciate your reference to the materials industry, to the the other segments of machineries and all that. I think those are segments which have completely been forgotten in the whole.
They're looking up to us. They have been talking to me, and asking me when the actual execution with full momentum would start. I am unable to give them any right answer because my earlier focus was maybe July will be able to start with full strength. Now I've been saying that maybe second quarter would be as as bad.
Okay, I get you. Thank you. Mr. Dubey, you know, if you look at the industry as a whole, see, some of the things are not going to go away. Like, you know, your dependence on mobilization advances from banks, your dependence on the various trust issues between the client and the builder, be it the government or a private client. So, but I think this whole experience of the last 2 to 3 months has it has taught us so many lessons, and I think it is probably high time that we, first of all, we are probably looking at the human tragedy in terms of the migrant workers' plight. Secondly, we are now looking at the plight of the building sector because of its inability to revive itself. Thirdly, but we need to look at what is the challenge that this whole crisis has presented to us, and do we see an opportunity here to work towards a new normal, where that normal will have elements which were so unfamiliar to us, maybe in February or March?
I think it's a great opportunity also from a different perspective, reset the button of the baseline of a construction industry. What has also happened is our construction is still very manpower heavy. Our construction strategies, our methodologies are very, one of the reason of distress is because we don't have a system of risk being shared between all stakeholders. Everybody thinks that's his problem. So if there is a work, the risk has to be shared equally. And once that understanding and notion comes into the picture, probably there'll be far better solutions and far reaching solutions. Honestly, so that's how I look at it. And one of the key things, like I'll just put you some basic thumb rule numbers. What is the impact of construction industry? So like if you spend 1 lakh rupees into a construction business, that really gives you a GDP of almost 1,50,000 rupees. And that 1,50,000 GDP translate to almost 3,20,000 of revenue. So there's a huge multiplier effect that is there, and you all are right. So both backward integration, forward integration. So there's a massive linkages that's there. Coming on to what do we do to really come out of it and what should be our strategy? I think the first thing has to be priorities. We need to start prioritizing what is important for us to build and what is not to build. So like if I'm doing an airport, I would definitely really prioritize the airstrip or the navigation part of it, then of really doing the shopping part of it. So that's a second important thing. Third important thing is we need to also understand the funds from the government and all, they will all start flowing into the sectors which are not really, so like health sector, honestly speaking, we hardly spend any money into that. So all those national infrastructure plan, you will see a diversion of big amount of chunk of money towards the health sector and all, which is not really a reality today. Coming on to those things, once you strategize your priorities, you need to start looking at that. What is that sustainability you can build with the availability of manpower? Thank God, our agriculture sector is not growing. Thank God. So because the reason is the moment that sector grows, you will have 50% of this manpower coming back to construction industry. Since agriculture is not doing great, they come to construction industry. Other important thing, which is once you really prioritize, probably we need to really go into the next important thing, start aligning, revisit the feasibilities of all your projects and investments and all, whether it makes sense to continue, because we are moving into a new normal, whether it should happen or not happen. Review the labor availability, review the engineering availability, review the workman availability. Please also, when you review all those things, not only look at what is happening at your end, look at the supply chain, because supply chain has gone into a massive disruption as of today. And then we need to start looking at something seriously as can I do work where I can provide a workspace to the workers in a controlled environment. I'm talking of moving the whole construction to a modular construction or prefabricated, or taking it to the assembly line kind of a thing, because in a controlled environment, you can manage a lot of these things. Today, if you see, most of our construction sites are production point. I think we need to move that from a production point to more of an assembly point, where we get a pre-finished goods and assemble it. I think that is something which we seriously need to look at. Now, to do that, definitely digitization is going to be a big thing. We should seriously look at it. And I think technology will move very fast into this space where we can do the same work with lesser amount of people, because we already had this problem. Probably still the cost delta was so massive, we never bothered to look at it, but now it's a high time to look at it. Last stage where we have to really sustain this whole thing, probably we need to start building ecosystem. We need to start looking at welfare of the people who can be staying there, and how do they bring the technology to monitor health and all, make it a new normal that you say. And then we need to start looking at the project governance system, be it a monitoring, be it contractual, these things. We need to bring everybody onto the same platform so that they all understand the success and the failures of this is together, not separately. Today, one of the reasons there is a massive distress because developer doesn't want to pay, contractor wants to take money, somebody is asking genuine money, somebody's, so there is a huge distress. Probably this will also lead to seriously, because honestly speaking, in a country like India, we don't have too many good GCs. We still work on a model of multi-prime contracting. We don't look at, so it's at the most you get into NSC with a GC and all, but then there are no real GCs, so that your risks are shared and all those things. So that's something is there. We need to really move to a scenario where the less contact is normal, and technology and all those things will really take away the whole initiative in a different perspective.
Mr. Vaidya, I think those are very important, pointers to where we could be going tomorrow. Basically, because this is, it's basically, as he concluded, future-proofing ourselves, from these kinds of sudden setbacks that can happen anytime, given the times in which we live today. So I think we need to really look at that aspect more, because as Sri Arun Sahai pointed out, the Builders Association and the various segments of the association have been working with the government, but it has not really had the desired effect, which means that the industry will have to fend for itself. So I think there needs to be more discussion on that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, and I can't agree with Dinesh more. I echo almost all the point what he said, because this has always been the issue. Like the international companies like Turners and Colliers and all of them, they sort of compare, right? Like, you can really see the difference of a construction industry outside India and within India, right? Like, of course, both sides has its plus and minuses, but one thing which is what he said is that, which I agree, is that the contactlessness of the construction industry would be a new normal, right? Like, one of the thing is that we always advocate, and I think Dinesh also will agree, and even Siva as well, that if you look at it, the project getting planned outside, the pre-construction part is a lot of time more than the construction part, right? I'd worked internationally on a project, right? Like, where the construction time, the pre-construction time, that is the planning of the project, procuring various elements, right? Tendering and getting everyone in the place is about an 18-month, right? And after that, the construction is just a 9-month affair, right? Like, so it's really sort of focusing more on a planning, compartmentalizing the whole thing, procuring everything to be ready, and the site can actually work as an assembly line. That's one of the very important factor of the construction, and that has need to be followed. Second thing, also we always advocate and agree that India need more GCs, right? Like, the general contractors are whole and soul of the construction industries, right? Like, they, like, when we compartmentalize, right? Okay, maybe sometime the developers or the owner think that they might be saving a little bit of money somewhere, but the thing is that at the end it will be losing the battle, right? Like, the whole thing is that under a general contractor's umbrella, the larger project can be done in a shorter period of time, which is do not happen if you have multiple contractors. It requires a lot more effort. And the general contractor, that way, like you have much outside the India, you have much larger international companies working as a general contractors and completing amazing large scale infrastructure and building project. While here, if you see that we have only very few handful, right? So this is sort of shows how the construction industry in its own progressed, that's one of the thing. And as the third point also is that the technology aspect of the construction industries, which is something kind of yet to sort of come in. Unfortunately, whatever the technology available here, actually right now kind of saves the time more than the money. So it's like it doesn't make the project affordable, doesn't make project really sustainable when it comes to the market demand. So the technologies need to be more affordable, say prefab or a precast or a steel structure is still much more expensive than the conventional system. So this is something which is hopefully it probably might become more popular and hence more cheaper, right? And the second thing is also probably I would like to add that what probably government should have done is what Dinesh says is the multiplier effect, right? Like the everywhere in the world, all the government understand this multiplier effect, right? Like when you sort of put in any money into the economy, you don't put it into the people's bank account. You put it into the project which actually multiplies and goes to the people's bank account. This is called Keynes effect, which is one of the economists has actually proved that probably around 100 years back, so the government would have actually sort of either bought over or invested into large scale infrastructure project, and that in turn would have sort of revived the industry, construction infrastructures, like a lot of builders has demanded that probably one of the solution of the housing, the housing project which has stopped or gone NPA is that the government take over that project and sell the housing because they need housing, right? So something similar also could have done. So these are the impact, and those things probably would help the construction industry going forward after probably 6 months when we kind of wake up, when we will see that we need to use more technology, remote monitoring, less and less people on the site, and more skilled laborer which are only doing more of an assembly work, while the planning and the procurement of the project is done much more in advance before the project start. So this is to keep the project duration to a minimum possible. That's the only way to go forward, right? All across the world, this is how people do the project, right? Like you don't extend the projects to 36 months, 40 months unless really required to.
Yeah, Mr. Dubey, there is a question to you from Mr. Girish Kalatkar. I'll come to Shiva once again after this. Clients have started negotiating the existing contracts with consulting companies in order to cut down on cost. What is your take on that? And also, there is a related question. Would digitization and technology advancement be feasible and viable for smaller construction companies?
I agree with you. And I think coming from the consultant perspective is, I think while we all understand and appreciate the fact that we all are in same situation, we are no better than the people who have a higher paying capacity. Finally, when you are a consultant, you just, the only money is that manpower cost. So I think from that perspective, when I look at it as while some level is okay, but trying to see issue is at the end of the day, I can't be subsidizing somebody else's business. So that's a reality of it. I will go to the level that it's manageable. While it is important for both of us, all the stakeholders to come together and tide over the situation, but then taking undue advantage is not really a correct thing to do. What will happen is, I know, see, these are the things, number one. Number two, and one of the things Jayant was mentioning is all those issues, most of this technology issues, they all bring a value of time. Surprisingly, if you see all the so-called housing models in past pre-RERA used to be advances from customer. That was the business model, So the time was nobody's money. Today it is reverse. So I think that is most important thing that is there. Coming on to the next question of digitization, I strongly believe smaller companies will do better with the digitization than a bigger company.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why I'm saying all those things is very simple fact is because of this COVID phenomena, everybody will start looking at their fixed and the variable cost. Now, when you start looking at the fixed and the variable cost, you just don't want to carry an inventory that has no use in a certain time of a year. At the same time, multi-skill, when you have one guy who's able to do work for all the seasons will be more sort of. Now that thing can only happen once a technology walk into this space. Honestly speaking, at least 60 to 70% of the work that we do in construction is very mundane work, repetitive job. I think they can be easily moved to technology platform. Yes, understanding, interpretation of technology depend on the business maturity of the market is a secondary function. So that we'll have to see. We'll have to pick up technology, what suits us best for at that point of time. So that's my answer to Girish.
Thank you. Shiva? So
Yeah.
generally,
I think
Mr. Dubey and Mr. Jayant have generally touched upon, generally spoken at length about what we are going to see in terms of use of technology, use of digitization and stuff like that when we reopen after this pandemic. Your thoughts?
See, one of the things that has to happen in the construction industry, and I think everybody has been talking about, and now probably is the right time. It will happen, and everybody will work towards that as a huge, change, or I would almost say it as a revolution. Because there is a significant opportunity to do that, and somehow, it has not been adopted because it all happened. Most of the things happen at a project level, and not at a industry level. So now it has to happen at the industry level, whether it's digitization or implementation of any other technologies. Digitization will help in terms of avoiding wastage. When I say wastage, there are two things here: material wastage, and then that will also convert into avoiding the time waste. Because how many times we all know, when people end up breaking things at site because things have not been coordinated properly. So you have to essentially virtually build the things in your technology platform and then go ahead and build it at site. So that would, directly related to, a reduction in wastage and therefore reduction of resources at a site, and then reduction in timelines. So these are the kind of changes if we implement, and it should become a revolution kind of thing, so that, we can reduce the wastages that we go into construction industry. That itself will be a significant saving. It could be huge percentages point. People have worked out, and sometimes people say it is in excess of 10% of the cost. When things are built virtually and then you convert it into a site level. So this is one thing people have to appreciate, and then there has to be industry level, regulation that comes into picture. Governments, in the European world, they have made, for example, BIM as a compulsory thing. They have different levels of BIM to be implemented in different kinds of projects. So we get to see a lot of these things in Indian contracts as well, but how far it is getting implemented is not very clear. I've seen contracts for metro projects where BIM has to be implemented, but then when it comes to the ground reality, it is not happening. So that is something the industry has to look at. Government has to come in support of that to get implemented. So that is the kind of revolution required going forward. If we have to minimize the labor force required, reduce the construction timeline. And then the other thing is the pre-planning of the projects. Most of the times what happens is, even in the private sector, is people are very eager to get things going on ground for various reasons. Even in terms of funding, they say, once I start the foundation, I'll start getting the funding. That is the kind of thing that we have to move away from and do the pre-planning, have 100% clarity how you're going to deliver the project, and then start the works on site. Most of the times what happens till now is, when you start the works on site, get the foundation going, and still the design is happening, people are trying to sort out the 100% funding, and then that affects the cash flow of the contractors. Most of the times, if the cash flow is good for the contractor, projects are progressing at a much significantly higher pace than the payment terms. If you are going to pay the contractors in 45 days or 60 days, that is going to directly impact on your project timelines. Because that is, again, the cash flow is the king, as we all know. So Mr. Sahai will agree on that. So those are the things, cash flow is something, and payment terms have to be really looked at in Indian context. Pay for things that are completed. When you're doing a work on the first of a month, then you're getting paid in 60 days, means you're getting paid for that work in 90 days time, which is not really viable in the current scenario. So those are the fundamental things that have to be looked at. And then the digitization, which could bring in a significant revolution, I would say, so that the acceleration can happen, because the opportunities are available, but it has not been implemented because nobody is ready to absorb the cost of it. So that is something the government could help the construction industry to bring in that wholesale change. We can look at what is happening in automobile or telecom. Yesterday, even Dinesh was mentioning that. Look at what has happened in the telecom industry in the last 10-15 years. It's a huge change that has been brought in. So those are the kind of things that we require in the construction industry, and not piecemeal efforts, which is very short-term and short-lived.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Dubey, when we speak about digitization and use of new technology and all that, and simultaneously when we speak about the labor-intensive nature of this industry, there is one segment who had still not made it to the industry, but who were waiting to join the industry, who are actually getting a little worried of their opportunities going, out of the door. So these are the fresh engineering graduates, or fresh youngsters who are coming into the field in different roles. What would happen to them, or would they have to retrain themselves, or be ready for something much more than what they are trained for in engineering colleges?
So here, basically, honestly speaking, it's a similar like IT. So they all are graduates. Our college curriculums are still not industry-ready curriculums. So that's the one point. So we do a lot of these things. So we spend a good amount of time in training. That's point one. Point two is, world over, if you see construction as it's only in India that you see agriculture workmen coming and doing a construction. And it is an off-seasonal activity. It is just like a part-time job. Now, issue is this has to move from a part-time job to a full-time job. Number one. Number two, and courtesy, agriculture segment is not growing. That's why these guys are coming. The moment agriculture incomes improves, you will have a real tough time. And so that's a nutshell. Now, coming on to new engineer, I think I personally believe it's a great opportunity to be there, because still, like simple example I'll give you, it's no more a civil engineer today. You need to be a building engineer, or you need to be a port engineer, because if you see today, buildings they're as complex as some of the things, when you do Mumbai's in a city like Mumbai and all, the kind of logistic that you have to plan is mind-boggling, and you need a skill of that nature. Now, managing the whole control ecosystem. So I don't see it, I won't not look at it from a perspective that the opportunities for them are not there. They are far bigger than what they were. Only the sphere and the areas of the work is different. In the whole project management parlance, and as Shiva mentioned, Jayant also mentioned, we are really, really poor in pre-construction. Our ability to pre-plan and do things rightly is not great. I think that's a great opportunity. We all get the gung-ho about seeing that China hospital being built in 6 days. Nobody thought they would have planned 18 months for that. It would have been already there as a factory setup, and they just got an opportunity, they assembled. It's not that we can't do better. If I know correctly, in BKC, MMRDA grounds, they erected a hospital in 15 days. Of course, they took a time. Now, issue is it's all there, it's planned. Why they could do? Because they've been doing this exhibition for almost a year long. So they have a ready-made infrastructure. They just reached it and did that. So what I'm trying to say is it's all there. It's only a question of prioritizing and focus. Yes, government has to have a support. He has to play a stellar role. And there's a very interesting example, you know, Singapore, if you see the 60s photograph is similar to Calcutta or Mumbai cities, you know, if you go to their photographs. In fact, I still remember in 2000, that erstwhile president, he came and addressed CIA and he wanted to emulate Delhi and Calcutta in Singapore. Now, what I'm trying to say is it's not very far. So what they did is they realized housing is a big problem. They built a whole housing ecosystem. That's how Singapore Housing Board came in, and they made it mandatory to have precast, which is 70% of the overall component. Now, what does precast does? Of course, they had a political reason of not getting the international labor to their country, but then that jettisoned into a level of technology that today Singapore is. Now, issue is that is where government has to come. And I think all this metro work that is happening, they started. So it's all BIM mandatory. It's all linked to SAP. KPMGs of the world are really helping them and all. What I'm trying to say is it's still possible even with us. It's only that the proactive nature and the overall holistically we need to look at it. And we most of the people have not really lived to the reality of the change business scenario that we are in. You know, financial closure of the project used to happen on. Today, you got to do financial closure and start the project. So I think these are some of the basics which is practiced world over. We need to start learning to live with it now.
Mr. Sahai, do you see this happening widely in the industry? Are these fears of the young graduates misplaced? Would you think that there will be more technology absorption in the industry as we go forward?
See, I'd like to share an information here with all panelists. For big volume projects, the new norm is EPC projects. They come to general contractors where we have to design and then execute. As in Ahluwalia contracts, we are doing a lot of projects which are EPC projects. Each project value more than 1,000 crores. So big projects, in order to save time and cost, the new norm is EPC. And when it is an EPC project, we get a lot of flexibility for adopting new technologies, doing value engineering, then digitalization. BIM in a lot of our projects is a norm because the design is ours. Design gets completed before the execution starts. This would all happen once the project, the planning is done in advance and then the execution starts. But as in projects, we have seen a practice where project starts and the drawings are still coming and they're getting changed. So they're getting changed because nobody has authority to freeze those drawings. Once either the client or the nodal agency or the consultant architects, they're still working on the design, and so they keep changing. So BIM model cannot work under such circumstances. But on EPC projects, we have been able to execute and do BIM modeling, and been successfully doing it. New engineers, yes, as Mr. Dubey said, they have to be trained for the industry. When they come, whether it's from IIT or from BITS Pilani or any engineering, regional engineering, NITs, they have an engineering background, but industry-related qualification has still to be taken by them. So the industry has to train them. And once, maybe we still have to have a 6 months course or a 3 months short duration course where they become more effective for the industry. That is very important because on-job training, when they come on the job and they have no mentor or no training actually been given, the focus is not there. So to have a focused new engineers to adopt new technologies and digitalization and effective tools for faster execution, better quality, it all can be done. But I personally have been propagating this, that there has to be some training program whereby they get that orientation or training. So that is something which I feel is very essential.
Yeah. Mr.
Yeah.
Jayant, doesn't this mean that we'll have to completely reimagine the way we train our youngsters in our engineering colleges and IITs and NITs and all that?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, this is sort of an important point because the future of the industry lies with them, right? Like, you know, and what you see right now is that as the curriculums is never industry ready, you know, like, and then you probably have to either unlearn certain things or kind of relearn a certain aspect of the things, you know, which is kind of changes completely the career side, right? Like, you know, so it's what you see right now is that the people on the job are evolving more than what they have done that in the college, right? Like, you know, so comparing again to the some of the projects, what we have seen is that, like, one of the thing over always is that this is coming the sort of the age of specialization. It's no more you could be just be a project engineer or a site engineer or you know, people need to sort of specialize into certain things, you know, like, and value add the entire process. The second thing which is you kind of have to see that is that is our education probably of 4 years engineering, is it sufficient, right? Like, you know, what is actually the requirement of internship, right? Like, you know, or would that be a sort of be like a kind of a construction project managers or construction engineers association should lay out norms of certain experience on the site before the graduate can come out and start working to a site independently with a company, you know, like. So one of the things which is there always is that sort of you know, it's a little probably maybe a focus on post graduation also would help them, right, in specializing the things. So which is what I would advise. Second would be the internship with a construction company, knowing the nitty gritty before someone comes out on the field and do the job would become very, very important here. And a lot more aspect would have to be going into now the technology part of that, right? Like, so as has been said earlier, the people, even the civil engineer is not an architect, but he still need to understand the Revit and BIM and all kind of technologies to get into the construction site. So the technology aspect need to be built in along with the curriculum and industry to be industry ready for an industry which will be a future industry, right? Like, so something without technology, I don't think anyone will be really assimilate into the system, you know. So that is what we think, and we can really use those guys having really little more age of the technology compared to what we all could do right now by ourselves, you know, like. So that's the thing, three things: the technology part of that, the practical training and the internship, and third, one of the important thing which is everyone told me is that if you are a successful project manager or engineer, you are probably much better than a management graduate, because you know how to manage multiple vendors, multiple things, how understand the human aspect of that, you know how to align. So probably the institution probably should put little more focus on the management part of that, which is, I think Siva and Dinesh both will agree, right, that this is today what will require in a construction industry of tomorrow, you know, like. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm happy that we were focused more on the positives and the possibilities rather than on the negatives and the missed opportunities as we discussed this time. So I think in one sentence, I would want all of you before we wind up to tell me and the audience what you see is the possibility in the near term and what would be the possibility in the long term. Because we have seen from the policy announcements of the Government of India that this has been used as by the Government of India as an opportunity to do many things that were pending for a long time. Some of it might be due for criticism or whatever, but I think even from a human individual to project managers to the government or the ministers and policy planners, I think these 2 months are going to be very, very significant for us during not just for this decade or this year, but for the coming years. It's a high.
So we'll have to have two strategies. One, we'll have to work out how the ongoing projects can be completed with the stresses and difficulties which we are going to face. Unless the ongoing project gets completed, the future projects will not be able to take off. We'll have a lot of difficulties because the construction companies, the developers, the real estate is actually in trouble. So one is for the existing projects, ongoing projects, how we intend to get complete. We want to complete them with the support of the government. Second, of course, is the future projects where we all agree that a lot of new technology, mechanization, and digitalization will help in cutting the cost and the time, and we'll be able to work on the new SOPs for the construction industry, like social distancing and all that can be that we'll be able to adopt and execute as well. But our today's focus has to be more on the revival of the industry in the present circumstances, which, as I say, the industry revolves around 3 M's. It's men, material, and money. All 3 are under stress. Men, workers are not there. Material chain, supply chain is affected. Money, the liquidity is not there.
Yeah.
So all 3 M's are now under stress. So this is something which we look. Future projects can be worked with new concepts, we know internationally, which are being adopted. And I would emphasize here, there are various departments like Central Public Works Department, CPWD in Government of India, who are now looking for new technologies and new materials and new concepts. BIM model there in their project has become necessary, is mandatory. So those things are coming up, but our stress point is the present situation, which we have to really work out.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Shiva.
Yes, I think in the short term, it might look like, there are a lot of challenges, and we know there are a lot of challenges that have to be overcome. And everybody has to, for the ongoing projects, the investors, the developers, and the construction companies have to come together to solve these problems. One party alone cannot solve it. So all the stakeholders have to come together, understand each other's risks, challenges, and then work towards the solution that can be implemented to solve the short-term issue. That is for the ongoing projects. And then for the long term, the implementation of the technology, the BIM, and training of the people. When I say people, it is the workforce and the engineering staff and the management staff. That training has to be imparted so that they get used to what is really required in the new normal, and also in the implementation of these technologies. That has to be there. And when it comes to the fresh graduates, they should see it as, maybe if it is engineering, they should see it as a 5-year course, complete the engineering, make themselves clear that I'm going to go on the job training, because it is going to cost money to the companies to train these people. It is not only paying their salaries, but it is costing the companies to train them. The first 1 year, you're not going to get any productive work out of the graduates. The engineering, the colleges, the students, everybody has to accept that it is a fact of life. And then they need to move forward in that direction where, okay, first year is going to be my training period. That is not a period where I can make a whole lot of money. That is my investment, the way I do it for the first 4 years in my college. They should see it as a 5-year investment if it is engineering, or if it is a 3-year, whatever it is. So they should see it that way. And that is what we also promote to the people. So okay, the company will provide you for whatever your basic living is, but then learn it, and maybe from the second or third year of your employment, probably you'll have a quantum jump. So that is what we need to look at for the fresh people. And then the long term, so that would help in terms of implementation of the technology, whatever we are talking about. Unless the people are trained to do it, then we will be discussing the same aspects year on year.
Yes.
And there won't be anyone to implement it. There is a large group of people available, large workforce available, and we need to utilize them, train them during this period of slowdown, so that when things pick up in a year's time, they are ready to implement it. That is what we need to be focusing on in the short term, and that will benefit us in the long term.
Yeah, thank you. Your thoughts, Jayant, on what we need to do in the short term and in the long term?
Yeah, I agree with what Siva said. Just probably to add is that now, as all the graduates today or whatever the students today is facing these challenges, what I would request them is that not to miss this period as a period to train themselves, right? Use this as an opportunity, get into the technology part of the construction, right? This is familiarize themselves with whatever they could do, or to innovatively probably be it BIM, be it programming, be it sort of procurement, really by themselves, this is really help them once the industry opens up, and also will kind of sort of reduce the training cycle a bit. This is what I would say the graduates or the people who are studying right now should do that.
Thank you. Dinesh, your final words.
Yeah, I would say resolve today, reimagine the future with a new normal, and reform the whole process. I think these are the three key words: resolve, reimagine, and reform. In terms of future, adopt technology to make it less contact in terms of development, and adoption of technology even to future-proof your businesses from the pandemic that we are in. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, panelists. We have many participants here, and they were all asking questions, but I was not posing those questions specifically because you were all touching upon many of those points in the course of your presentations. Girish Kalatkar, there were anonymous attendees asking questions. Nagashri Gaonkar, Tejaswini, Suraj Padi, Pallavi Sawant, and Rabindra Shekhar, Rahul Dave, and Nagashri. So many of them. They have been asking so many questions, but I think I'm sure several of the points that they had touched upon in their questions have been addressed by the panelists in the course of this 1.25 hour of webinar on the way forward for the construction sector in India. I thank you, each one of you, for your participation, for your kind participation, and very active and very, very insightful observations and comments and opinions that you have expressed in the course of our debate and discussion. Thank you very much on behalf of Construction Philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for moderating so well. Now we are kind of getting used to where we know what is your thought process. And thank you so much for moderating it really in an excellent manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nebu.
Thank you, friends.
Right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.